Hard Talk with Jakim show.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of
The
fair
views
use.
expressed at or through this broadcast is those of the individual host and guests in their individual capacities only. The information provided on this broadcast does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, all information, content, and material available on this broadcast are for general informational purposes only. All viewers should contact their attorney to obtain advice with respect to any...
Peace and blessings. This is Jakim from the Hard Talk with Jakim show. Can't get enough of the Hard Talk with Jakim show? You can email us at btom6164@gmail.com. That's bthomp6164@gmail.com. Peace.
Family, watch this.
I mean, just look at how money controls politics in America today. The Supreme Court's decision on the Citizens United case opened the floodgates for corporate money in elections. Billionaires and corporations pour millions and millions of dollars into political campaigns, drowning out the voices of ordinary people, of the whole electorate. They're hiring candidates. They're writing laws. They're purchasing policies that serve their interests. This isn't democracy, it's oligarchy. When a handful of wealthy individuals can dictate policy and sway elections, obviously democracy doesn't exist. Politicians just do a tour of duty in government to prove their loyalty to their funders before moving to highly paid positions in the private sector, working then for the same people that they worked for all along. The democracy they have is the one they always intended to have, which is one in which only the rich and the owners of the society have any say. You have the right to free speech only because no one listens to you.
Well, peace and blessings, y'all. This is your man, Jakim Muhammad, with the Hard Talk with Jakim show. Listen, I've got an action-packed show tonight. So, big shout-outs to Shahid Bolson. Yes, that was the thing that he had on TikTok, and a lot of people have been talking about that particular thing. So when you contact me and ask me about what's the Citizen United decision, why is there big money in politics? Well, I got two great guests on here that's going to talk to you about that here in Delaware. Now, I do have to, before I bring them on, I do have to say that in Delaware, our general election early voting dates are October 25th and through October 29th. So you can do early voting through October 25th through October 29th, and then from October 30th to to November 3rd. So you can get those early votes. We did it in the primary. You might as well do it in the early election. Listen, I got a good guy here, a good friend that I've known for a number of years now, that was out in the streets with me, Mr. John Flaherty. I'm trying to say it Irish. Flaherty.
You're doing great, Jakim.
We got Mr. John Flaherty that I have known for a number of years now. And we've got Mr. Nick Wasileski. I think I did it right, did I?
Yes, you pronounce it better than I can.
Yes, thank you. And they're both from a group called DelCOG, and this is about open government. So tonight, we're going to talk straight up politics with y'all. So sit back, get your popcorn. We're going to have a little bit of fireworks. I'd like to start with you first, John. In Delaware, we've had what I consider malfeasance and corruption with a couple of people that were in elected office here. One of the things that we've talked about for many years, and your organization has talked about, was an inspector general. How would an inspector general be great for Delaware, John?
Well, everybody needs to have checks and balances. We need to have. Nobody likes to have people looking over their shoulders, particularly politicians. You know, we have 62 members of the Delaware General Assembly. When they commit waste, fraud, or abuse, they don't have anybody looking over their shoulder except themselves. The ethics of the General Assembly, the House and Senate, are conducted by the Senate Ethics Committee and the House Ethics Committee. And the only time you can be brought up in charges if one of your colleagues files a complaint. A citizen can't file a complaint. You know, we had the last time the ethics committee met on a substantial violation of the public trust was probably State Representative John Atkins back in 2007, 2008.
Yes, I remember.
He was a Republican. He had done some hanky-panky down in Ocean City, and he got stopped by a policeman, and he handed the policeman his legislative card, thinking that was going to get him out of trouble. And it made the papers, and he got in a whole lot of trouble. And the legislature did not act until there was a huge series of articles and radio shows about his conduct. And it got to a point where there was such a demand for something to be done with Atkins that he filed a complaint against himself. He, in fact, was the plaintiff and defendant at the same time. He ended up resigning, changing parties to becoming a Democrat. He was out of office for 2 years. He ran as a Democrat, got elected, and then 6 years later, he was defeated. So there was no mechanism to hold him accountable for what he did. He did a lot more than what that one incident that I talked about. But the point is that you need to have checks and balances, and an inspector general would be a good first step to having a checks and balance.
Yeah, you know, John, you're absolutely right. I think, and I have been a proponent for Inspector General, but I know Nick and your organization, DelCOG, that you both are a part of, Nick, I know that y'all been talking about this for a number of times. And whether we talk about a lady that I actually did like, Kathleen McGinnis, or anybody else, whether the knucklehead out here, Darius, with things with taxes and other stuff going on, I think the Inspector General is needed. Tell me, Nick, why do you think the Inspector General is needed?
Well, at DelCOG board meetings over the years, and I've been a member of DelCOG now for 11 years, and John's a founding member of DelCOG. DelCOG stands for the Delaware Coalition for Open Government. And one of our missions is to promote accountability and transparency in government. And every so often at a monthly board meeting, something would come up and a board member would say, you know something, if we had an inspector general, that person could investigate this problem. And an inspector general, a boilerplate definition of an inspector general is a nonpartisan, independent agency. It's not elected, it's an appointed office that would provide oversight of state agencies, state employees, state-funded entities for fraud, waste, abuse, and mismanagement. In fact, the word mismanagement is rather unique to the Inspector General bill that's been placed before the General Assembly. Normally, inspectors general look at things that are crimes, theft or whatever. But the mismanagement issue looks at issues that would not rise to the level of a crime, but would harm Delawareans. For example, the tipping point that got DelCOG involved with promoting the need for an inspector general was the dismantling of the Rodney Square bus hub. That was what, yes. 2017, 2018.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And at one of our board meetings, there must have been a dozen people from the community that attended it. At that time, this was before COVID, and our board meetings were held at the Woodlawn Library in Wilmington. And 12 people from the community showed up. One guy was on a walker, and they said, "Look, this bus has been dismantled." Before I was able to walk off one bus, take a few steps, get on another bus, and go someplace. But with its dismantling, I can't make it to my second bus. And, was a crime being committed by the state? Probably not. But was it a mismanagement issue, a neglect of office issue? Probably was. And the way the bills have been written in Delaware is that mismanagement of office can be investigated if it's harmful to the public. And that's very, very novel.
Well, Nick, I'm going to say this. That is the way we should have it. We haven't had a bill get passed yet. Is that correct, John?
That's correct. It originally came up in 2007. Bill Overly had an inspector general bill that passed the House 41-0, and whatever to the Senate, and the governor at that time, Ruth Ann Minner, I understand, did not support it, and the bill never came up for hearing in the Senate.
Hold on. Surprise, surprise. A politician doesn't support something that would be oversight of them. That's a surprise, ain't it?
But yeah, that's a surprise. But we, through Nick's persistence and his bulldoggedness, we got a bill introduced this previous session. Senator Lawrence Sturgeon was the sponsor of the bill. We had a hearing where it was voted out of committee, but then it was referred to the Senate Finance Committee, and it never got a hearing. It got killed in the Senate Finance Committee. So we are very, very hopeful that with the new governor and the new members of the Senate and the House, that we're going to have a greater political push to get this bill heard in committee, voted on by the full body, and then signed by the governor at some point in the next 2 years.
Well, you know, this is important. So to all the viewers out there, this is important. This is what matters in your life, because even if you don't play politics, politics is being played on you. You're absolutely right. I hope that we do get this bill. Now, I know that you said that it's management, waste, fraud, and abuse. Now, will the Inspector General have any type of arrest powers, or do they have to go to somebody else to see if something goes down? Because hold on, before any of you answer that, again, what tie-in would it have with the auditor? Because we know what happened with the Labor Department.
You want to do that, Nick?
Anybody? Nick, you got it.
All right. You've asked a lot of questions here, and I'll try to remember. First of all, tie in with the auditor. The way the current bill, the last bill that was Senate Bill 21, the last legislative session, Senator Laura Sturgeon was the sponsor. And incidentally, Senator Sturgeon contacted me recently, and she disclosed to me that she is going to sponsor the Inspector General bill in 2025. Okay.
Beautiful.
Okay. The way this bill is written is that the Inspector General would work cooperatively with the Auditor of Accounts, the Public Integrity Commission, and the Department of Justice, so that if there is overlap, we're not duplicating effort. So that issue has been solved now. And also in the bill, it states in the synopsis of the bill, in fact, it states that an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, can be written to make sure that there is cooperation among these offices.
Well, let me just ask you again, being that I'm from a law enforcement background, I'm a retired law enforcement from New York. If it had to be a criminal, if there had to be some malfeasance that was done that arise to a criminal act, it probably would have to be done by the Attorney General of our great state in order for them to actually bring up charges. Is that correct?
You're correct. That's how the bill is written, that it would be referred to, a criminal case would be referred to the Department of Justice.
All right. So, we are in such a need of an Inspector General, and to everybody out there, whether you're watching me in South Jersey or Georgia, because I got a lot of people that watch me all over, remember this show is actually going to be played 24 hours now on Delaware Info Now. That's Delaware Info Now on YouTube. You can see it and rerun it many times, or on the Hard Talk with Jakim show on YouTube. So let me just ask one more before we take a quick break. So the inspector, hold on. Actually, I got a lot of emails for this particular show. And one of the emails asked me about FOIA requests from the state. And why are most of the FOIA requests that they get, there's either highly expensive or that a lot of agencies don't want to do a FOIA request. John, you can take that one.
Yeah, well, for example, I've done a lot of FOIA requests in my time. And on the Rodney Square bus hub, I made a request of DelCOG, the governor's office, and I think one other agency. And the Department of Transportation came back and said, all right, we got some emails that are relevant to the dismantling of the Rodney Square bus stop. It's going to cost you $800. I said, I don't have that. So I had sent a request into the governor's office. Now, to their credit, the governor waived the fee, didn't charge me a penny. And I got 200 pages of emails. Now, 100 pages I was able to read. The second 100 pages were completely blacked out. Now, I then appealed to the Attorney General's office. I said, look, the governor is claiming executive privilege by blacking out 100 pages of emails, and the executive privilege was never meant to include bus stops. What could be controversial? You don't like buses? I get it. You move a bus, why can't we know why you moved that bus stop? And the Attorney General's office did not pursue that, and I was very disappointed. Of the emails we did get, even though we didn't get charged any money, a couple things happened. Number one was that a lot of the big shots around Rodney Square had contacted Governor Carney. He was running for office.
That's
and,
right.
He allowed them, once he became governor, he allowed them to contact state officials directly. And that's a no-no. You know, state government should operate for the public good. And if Governor Carney wants to give orders, he can do that. They should have contacted him directly, but they were contacting and moving a lot of these state officials. The other thing was about Rodney Square is that there was a human cost to people going here, there, and everywhere. Mothers, elderly people, that all of a sudden now they got to walk 5 or 6 blocks. But there was a two-part process. There should be a public process, and there was. But before that, there was a secret process. And that secret process eliminated about 1,000 buses a day from Rodney Square. And that action would have been right for an inspector general to investigate and check it out.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, there was no public purpose to shutting down the buses. In this day and age, nobody is shutting down transit hubs across the country. They're adding transit hubs. And that's what they did here. It was ideal. It was a good place to catch a bus for about 100 years. And there still are buses stopping there, but not nearly as much as there were in 2017 before they reduced the service.
You're absolutely right. And sometime in this show, I'm going to get onto a public transportation piece that's going to be very important. But I'm going to ask you, before we go on our first break, the FOIA request that you got from the governor was mostly, you said about 100 pages was redacted. And those redacted pages are probably the meat and the source of information that you probably needed in order for it. I'm not saying that they were hiding anything, but when you redact a lot of things and then you claim governor privileges or executive order.
Why they had to redact anything about moving buses is beyond me, but they did.
Because for the layman out there, it seems as though that they were hiding something. But we'll get back to that. So I'm going to get right back to you. I'm going to give you a chance to get some water, get back, and I'm give the viewers a chance to get your comments on. If you're on Facebook, you can get us now. But if you ain't, when you watch this, you can always send the comments. We'll be right back with the Hard Talk with Jakim show.
Ancestor Toni Morrison told us in 1975 that racism is not just a fraud, but a masterful distraction. They say that Black people have no culture, are not civilized. We spend all this time trying to prove that we are civilized, prove that we have an ancient culture that dealt in science and mathematics. They treat us with complete disregard for our health and our safety, and we scream to the top of our lungs. Black lives matter. We matter, we matter, we do, we do. It's a masterful distraction that keeps us from doing the real work. She talked about the fact that we have to stop fighting the fever and fight the disease. The disease is power. The point has always been power. And we will continue to lose our power, or really maintain none, so long as we are distracted and stuck in this cycle of trying to prove our worth, The only
Peace and blessings, y'all. This is Jakim from the Hard Talk with Jakim Show. Listen, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why I'm holding up a law dictionary. You know, a lot of the things that we learned in school were things that didn't even matter. But that would have been something that's part of the curriculum that we should have learned. Because a lot of words that we think in the dictionary mean one thing, but in court proceedings, they mean another. I mean, from signing contracts to being sued to being criminally arrested, all of the big things in your life, they use a law dictionary against you. And most of the time, it's because you don't know what that word really means. So I'm just saying that we need to change our curriculum in the United States of school and focus on things that matter. Peace and blessings, y'all. Hard Talk with Jakim Show. We out. All right, y'all, we're back with the Hard Talk with Jakim Show. And listen, I would be remiss if I did not tell you the reason why I'm wearing my purple tie today, and I've been wearing it all month in every show, because we're, as an ambassador for the domestic violence, this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And let me be very clear to you, some people don't know, when law enforcement, we see so much domestic violence, whether coming through the jails or coming through the precincts or wherever we see so much of it. And it's all classes, all races, all economic wealth, the domestic violence. And a lot of people who actually are victims of domestic violence are also abusers of domestic violence. So we just want y'all to be aware that this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and you might see it and you might not. But if you do see it, please tell somebody, say something.
Hey,
Listen,
Nick, let me I want to mention about domestic violence. There was an incident about 6, 7, 8 years ago involving Rodney Square. Young lady was pushing her baby up Walnut Street, and this guy came and was harassing her, and she kept going, and she took refuge up at Rodney Square. And a young man came to her aid. He was stabbed and he died.
Lost his life.
They eventually caught that guy. And that incident was used by some of these anti-bus people to justify moving buses out of Rodney Square, about the crime at Rodney Square. Well, this wasn't a crime committed by transit people. This was two people who just happened to be there. One died and the other woman was able to be safe. And it really bothers me that young man died and his death was used to justify moving buses out of Rodney Square.
And I agree. It should have been used the other way around, why we needed to keep buses and needed to keep people. Because here was a good Samaritan who lost his life trying to save somebody from an abusive relationship or an abusive stuff. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. Thank you, John. Nick, and one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about as your organization is this thing that we had with our labor department, that there was some waste and fraud or misuse of funds. Could you give the audience just a little bit of what we have found out from the auditor?
Okay, we really haven't found out much from the auditor, but let me just give you a quick timeline to put everybody on the same level playing field. In the first quarter of 2023, a Department of Labor employee embezzled $181,000 from the Division of Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. He was caught very quickly. That was the first quarter. He was caught at the end of March 2023. At that time, the Department of Labor notified a number of entities: the Auditor of Accounts, the Department of Justice, the United States Department of Labor Office of Inspector General, and the Department of Finance, and probably a few more. And a police investigation occurred at that time. So there was a quiet period between April 2023 and August 2023, at which time the police concluded their investigation. That would have been the perfect time for the public to learn about this embezzlement, but it wasn't disclosed in violation of the Delaware Code. The Delaware Code clearly states that the Office of the Auditor of Accounts and the Division of Accounting, which is part of the Department of Finance, must disclose in written reports any illegal activity, which they did not. A whistleblower came forward to the news media, and on May 6, 2024, this is 8 months after the police investigation concluded, a whistleblower came forth to the news media and reported in the news on May 6, 2024. That's how we learn about it. In fact, it's kind of hilarious. I got an email from Senator Laura Sturgeon on that day, May 6, 2024, and she said, "Nick, read this." And it was a link to Sarah Mueller's report at WHYY that the embezzlement occurred and had been kept a secret, had been hidden from the public in violation of the Delaware Code. And that's how DelCOG got involved. We think there needs to be an investigation.
Yes, and I will say this: not only does there need to be an investigation, there needs to be some headroom because it constantly goes on, and when it constantly goes on, and there's no repercussion because of it, all you're going to do is invite more of it. And yeah, thank you that DelCOG got involved in it. Again, this is the Hard Talk with Jakim show. And listen, we also wanted to talk about just real quick, a little bit about public transportation, and I'm gonna leave this one out for John on this one. I see that our Dark First State is now going forward with their I think it's a 6-7 year plan that they're trying to get rid of buses and doing this micro transit where you would use like an Uber. You would call for a bus when it's convenient for when you want to go somewhere, which is not convenient for the public. I'm going to say what I said in 2017 where we was at Rodney Square real quick, John. In order for Delaware to become a world-class state, we need to have a world-class public transportation. That has to happen. We have Amtrak here, and if y'all don't know out there, Amtrak's hub is right here in Wilmington, Delaware. And we have all of this public transportation around us, and yet we have bad public transportation right now in Delaware and what they're planning on. What do you say about that, John?
Well, the Wilmington Amtrak station is probably the 9th busiest Amtrak station in the country.
Yes.
The SEPTA service to Philadelphia. There are 14 SEPTA lines in the SEPTA system, and the Wilmington to Philadelphia is the 7th busiest line on that system. We have a DART statewide bus service. What we need is greater frequency of service. We don't need mini buses. We don't need Ubers. Anybody can do that on their own. But what we need to do is have greater frequency of service. We need to have say, for example, on Sunday, we need to increase Sunday service to duplicate what we have on Saturday. We need to have greater frequency, and they have done that on some of the lines. The number 6,
they have.
Corporate Highway, the number 13, which goes up and down Market Street. So they have enacted greater frequency of service in some of the lines. But I'm hopefully that this new governor will take a firmer stance and support public transportation. I remember when they took out the 301, the DART 301 was taken out of Smyrna.
Right.
People in Smyrna didn't like the 301. Well, it was ideal to serve the people Smyrna, going through Smyrna, coming in one end, coming out the other. The number 6 bus, the mayor didn't like it in Newark, going down Main Street, said they were too big. Well, Main Street in Newark is clogged with traffic. And what they did with the number 6, it used to go all the way down to City Hall and then come around to do the Perkins Student Center. They stopped that. They go right at the edge of town, and you got to find your way going uptown, either on a new bus. But there needs to be more political oomph behind protecting mass transit and having common sense improvements, and frequency of service is probably one of the biggest things that I hear when I ride the buses.
Well, one of the things that I hear when I ride the bus, and I was just on it, a lot of young people who are just starting out in their endeavors, Nick, they're starting out and they may not have a car, so they need the bus in order to get to their jobs or these entry-level jobs that they're going to, and for them to do some of the changes. Now, I'm going to say this to the audience, and I was given permission to say it. The reason why I know this is because the president of ATU, which is the American Transportation Union that the drivers and operators here in Delaware are a part of, sent me what they have planned. This is all part of what they call the DART Reimagined plan that they have. And one of the things that I'm gonna give this to you, Nick. If you're just starting out, or if you have a minimum wage job and you don't have the transportation, public transportation is so vital in our state. And maybe it wasn't when we were just a company town, when it was just, MBNA or the other one, DuPont. But it's vitally important now. What do you say about that, Nick?
It is vital. I'll give you some examples. When I was working, at one time my office was in Wilmington, and during the course of the day, I had to visit clients all over Newcastle County and Pennsylvania. I had to have a car. I had to have a car because it's part of my job. One of my next door neighbors, however, worked in an office downtown Wilmington. And she took the bus into Wilmington every day.
Right.
And it was necessary for her to do that. And I'll give you another. During my formative years, when I was going to college, I was getting my master's degree at Temple University, and I was a high school teacher here in Newcastle County. I would take SEPTA up to Temple.
Right.
Right. To the Center City station. Then I take the subway up to Temple. And that was so convenient to do that. I mean, to drive from here up to, northern Philadelphia, it would be very difficult. So I think that public transportation is really important.
Well, when I go to Philadelphia, I don't drive. I actually I get my SEPTA key card and I get on the SEPTA train just like everybody else. And especially if you're going to Temple. Now, most of the time, most of those trains that actually go to Jefferson or 30th Street Station or Suburban Station actually go on to Temple. So now you don't have to take the local one. You can just take Wilmington straight there. But I'm going to give you one more thing. For my people that's in South Jersey, I felt so bad about the train engineer that died on the light rail last week on the River Line, because I've taken that too. I ride on New Jersey Transit as well. And one of the things that I kept hearing from news reports that are in New Jersey, whether it be the NJ New Jersey, was that they were complaining about falling trees on the tracks, and for years no one in New Jersey Transit took it seriously. That's an abomination.
That family is now going to sue New Jersey Transit.
Yes, they are.
For the benefit of your viewers, the River Line is I guess you call it a light rail line.
It's a light rail
going from Camden to up to Trenton, and it travels on the western side of New Jersey along the Delaware River.
Right.
It's a good alternative sometimes if there's problems with the SEPTA bus going to Trenton. You can always take the Patco over to New Jersey. It's unique in the sense that most light rail lines are electric. This is diesel. These are diesel rail systems, and they have articulated centers, and they're very long. But you need to keep free of debris and shopping carts, trees, or whatever, and that's a responsibility of New Jersey Transit. And it was tragic that this woman who had been, I think, with the River Line for about 20 years, she has three children, lost her life in this tragic accident.
One of the things that I've always say that when it's these clearly avoidable stuff, it's just unexcusable to me, and it almost borderlines on criminal negligence. So I'm going to leave it there. Nick, I got a question for you that always comes up when we talk about transportation here in Delaware, is why we don't have a light rail going from Wilmington to Dover. Now, we've heard all the excuses. We know all the excuses. People come up with these plans, then they talk about the money and the funding. I think it's because they just don't want to do it. What do you say about that, Nick?
Well, you need political motivation to do anything in Delaware. And that motivation comes from the people. And maybe it's time that the citizens of Delaware move forward on this initiative and pressure, or influence our elected officials that we need to do something about that.
And Joaquin, about 20, 25 years ago, two individuals in Delaware had come up with plans for trolley lines to Dover. One was Len Sovereign, and the other was Doug Andrews. And they both were incredibly detailed, but they were transit lines on maps. They weren't reality. But in around 2000, well, actually before that, we did get an organization I was a member of, the Delmarva Rail Transportation Association. We got through Doug Andrews, who became later on marketing director for DelDOT for Delaware Transit. We got an Amtrak train going to the Harrington State Fair. It was only once a year, but we had to go through. It took about 2 or 3 years to get that done, and it ran for about 10 years. You could take the train from Wilmington, Philly to Wilmington, went down the what they call the Delmarva Secondary to Middletown, Dover, and finally to Harrington. Then Governor Minner decided that it was too expensive. There was a cost involved with the insurance, but it was a start. We thought that would be a viable start to get more mass transportation, rail transportation downstate. And we even had interest from Dover Downs to possibly have a shuttle to the Dover train station over to see the races. But she cut the funding out of that, and around 2006, it ran for about 10 years.
Well, let me just say this to all the viewers. I want you to understand that there are people that had great ideas, great investigation on things that happened, and the reason why they didn't happen is because the public didn't make enough noise about it. I gotta tell you, it's almost a fugazi if I tell you this, that if you do not make enough noise about things, it will not get done. Now, I do want to get back to a transparent government and open government. And one of my emails that I got this week was criticizing the Attorney General here in Delaware, Kathleen Jennings. And what they criticized was that there was a lot of abuse in insurance and other stuff. And I said, I don't know if that's really her area, but she should be able to do it. But more importantly, consumer affairs. So the Attorney General has the power in consumer affairs, because the person was complaining that they go into some stores and they never have a price list though. And why is that? And Nick, do you know anything about that?
About consumer affairs?
Yes.
In fact, I'll tell you a funny anecdote here. A few years ago, when Kathy Jennings was running for Attorney General, she had a meet and greet here in Newark, where I live.
Right.
And I mentioned to her that I get a lot of spam calls. I mean, almost every call I get is phishing and spam, which is a consumer affairs issue. I mean, literally every day. And I've gotten to the point now, if I don't recognize a phone number, I just don't answer the phone. I just do it. But that problem is so huge. I'm not sure. I think law enforcement could dedicate all of its employees just tracking down consumer problems.
The federal government would have definitely have some say in it, and I guess whatever federal district we're in. What federal district are we in? Are we in the Southern District?
I'm not sure.
I think whatever
Federal Trade Commission would be the independent agency that would deal with that.
Right, but I would think that states have a lot of pull there, and I think that if you had something with consumer affairs, that maybe an inspector general would have some responsibilities or some authority over that as well, especially price gouging. One of the things that I was getting at, they was complaining that one of the gas stations in their neighborhood was not giving them the right gas, not giving them the right amount. And who do we complain to that about? And I told them that that's actually the Attorney General's purview. So
yeah, it not only is the Attorney General's purview, but there's an agency in the Department of Agriculture for weights and measures. They go out and they measure the accuracy of these gas pumps. And
right, and I did direct them toward that, which I think is under agriculture. Yeah. I believe that department is under agriculture, but I just think we in Delaware, and gentlemen, y'all can agree with me with this or not. I just think that in this, when we're dealing with taxpayer money, we need to tighten up our belts and make sure that we are not allowing this fraud, waste, and abuse to go on. And if that is requiring an inspector general, so be it. What do y'all say about that?
Yeah, I agree. And in reference to this example about consumer affairs and weights and measures, if a state agency is not doing its job, or its policies and procedures are weak, then it would fall under the mismanagement area of the Inspector General bill. And an Inspector General bill would certainly have authority to say, what's going on here? Aren't you inspecting gas stations enough? Or maybe you need more employees, whatever the reason is. But an Inspector General could investigate policies and procedures of a state agency which is failing in its mission.
You know, Jakim, we talked about Department of Labor. The auditor audited the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. The Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund is between $350 and $400 million. Her report was that everything was so screwed up, she could not give an audit opinion about the fund. So even though this unfortunate incident where the young man did take his life once he got discovered, it still doesn't provide any answers as to whether there's other theft going on there that we don't know about.
That is correct. And John, you're right.
Now, in the past, we've had similar thefts in the Escheat, the Abandoned Property Fund. We had a couple incidents there about 10, 15 years ago where employees on the inside took advantage of the fact that there are hundreds of millions of dollars coming in every year of abandoned property, and they took advantage of their little cut. And we need to have a system of checks and balances, and we don't have that now with state government, and that's why we need an inspector general.
All right, Joe. Well, listen, you're absolutely right. This is the Hard Talk with Jakim show. Listen, we're going to be right back. We're going to finish up our stuff about Inspector General, why we need an Inspector General. And I'm going to leave our two guests with this question when we come back. We're going to talk about really hyper-local, the Parking Violation Bureau in Wilmington, and why we don't know really what's going on. We'll be right back with the Hard Talk with Jakim show.
Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Silence in the face of injustice is complicity. When you stay silent, you allow wrongs to continue unchallenged. Your voice is a weapon. Use it. Think about what sets your soul on fire. Equality, justice, human rights. Fight for these. Don't wait for others. Be the one who steps into the fray, who shouts the truth. Crush fear and complacency. Every time you speak out, you shake the foundations of oppression and inspire others to join you. Don't be a bystander. Be a warrior for what's right. The time for action is now. Be relentless, be fierce, and let your voice thunder against injustice."
Separate the message from the messenger. And you will find out that all of them, there is so much truth behind it.
Malcolm X once said, "If you have no critics, you'll likely have no success." This quote reminds us that facing criticism is an inevitable part of the journey to success. Embrace.
Is there anything that could happen with him indictment-wise that would say, all right, maybe this disqualifies him for president?
Not for me. I'm with him to the finish.
All right, thank you so much.
He could stand on the front steps of the White House and commit murder, and I'm with it.
All right, y'all. All right, back. Y'all see that last foolishness. All right, so I've got a lot of people wanting me to talk about what Barack Obama said to black males this week, and I'm just going to tell you this: the Democrats blew this week. Their messaging was terrible this week. I will tell you this: that it's almost the same thing. That if Trump said the same thing by black folks not voting for Trump, or Latinos not vote for Trump, you're crazy. And then Barack Obama saying the reason why you didn't vote for Kamala Harris is because you're misogynist. Both, I will say, the Democrats have terrible messaging this week. Clean it up. All right, y'all, this is the Hard Talk with Jakim show. And we're back with Mr. Nick and Mr. John. And we're talking about open government. We're talking about Inspector General, and now we're going to be talking about parking in Wilmington, Delaware. Now, this issue has been on forefront for almost 3 administrations now. Whether it started with Baker, Williams, and Prizicki, and Mayor Putt-Putt that I call him, there's something's going on, and we have not fixed this. Nick, what do you say about this parking violence?
You know, it's when I worked in Wilmington, as I mentioned, I drove my car because I had to visit clients, and I parked in a parking garage. And if I go to Wilmington now, I park in a parking garage. I do not park on the street because I don't want my car hauled away and never get it back.
Jakim, when Prizicki got elected in 2017, one of the first things he did was to tear up like $1 million worth of tickets that people had got running the traffic camera there at Concord and Broome Street. It was so confusing, and I give him credit for doing that. But since that time, I know I've talked to Ken Grant, who has been the real leader in this effort.
That's right. I know Ken.
Oh, he's done a fantastic job. It should not be so opaque. It should not be so confusing. I know a friend of mine, Dion Wilson, he had his car towed away.
That is correct.
And,
yes.
He didn't know why he had it or where to go to get it out. It was so confusing. And they need to have a process that the citizens know what to do. When my car got towed, and it was my fault because I let the registration relapse, I didn't know where to do. I went down to DMV. No, we don't know anything about it. I went to the police station. No, not here. So finally, I went uptown. I got a release form from the Department of Finance. I went down to the police department, and they gave me a release form to take over to the tow yard. But I had to learn that on my own. It shouldn't be that difficult. And the parking tickets, when people get it, they should have a right of appeal, and it's confusing, and they need to really clean that up.
You're absolutely right. So let me just give you a little thing what happened with me. In 2017, 2018, I think, I saw somebody's car had the yellow boot on it in Wilmington. And I took a picture and put it on Facebook. That's when Ken Grant got with me and said, listen, man, this is an issue. And I had a young lady who responded to my picture on Facebook, and she said that was her car. And it was parked right over there on Market Street near 9th. And it seemed like they was targeting those 6 blocks from Market Street, from 10th, and from 11th all the way down to 3rd or 2nd. And it became and that was the beginning of Mayor Putt-Putt's administration. And again, I'm going to tell the people that's listen to me. If you have good public transportation and you need to go to Wilmington, you wouldn't need to have that parking issue. But we need to fix this parking issue. It has now been over 3 administrations, and I hope this next administration, I don't have too much faith in, but I hope this next administration can fix this problem. You can't be a world-class place if you don't have good public transportation and if you keep taxing people who drive into the city. Let me just pivot real quick. Since this is our last go around, Nick, I'm going to ask you, what is the biggest thing that you think open government should do, other than Inspector General? We know that that's a priority. What do you think is the next thing?
Okay, I think I heard your question. It's a little garbled on my computer, but other than the Inspector General, what is another open government thing that we should get involved in? Okay, I think in reference to the Delaware Coalition for Open Government, we promote transparency and accountability. And I think what we need are FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, rules that are easier to use, that don't cost you a lot of money, and that when you ask for a document, you get it in a reasonable time.
I think so. I agree.
And DelCOG works on this all the time in one form or another. We help people with FOIA requests, things along those lines. But it just seems to me that, the preamble of FOIA is that, the government works for the people, and the people should have access to what the government is doing.
Jakim, what the government hopes is that people will get tired and they'll quit.
Always.
We have been persistent. Nick has been like a bulldog on this issue, and we're not going to quit till we win. It took Karen Peterson about 8 years to get a bill passed, signed into law that would include the General Assembly under the Freedom of Information Act. So she was patient. She was determined to get it passed, and it finally did. And that's what we're going to have to do with the Inspector General bill.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So we have to focus on that, much to the detriment of other things, but you can't be involved in too many things, because then you lose your focus. And this is a big plus. If we can get an Inspector General bill passed here in Delaware, it would be a big public benefit to everybody in the state.
I agree 100%. And, to everybody out there that knows, I've been saying this for a number of years. The politics here is dirty and deep. The Delaware way is a knucklehead way. It doesn't have to be. We need to get rid of it right now. I know the Delaware way is nothing different than the Louisiana way or the New York way, but we need to get rid of it now. Now, I am going to say this. Nick, if you wanted to get involved with your organization, DelCOG, how can they get involved?
Easy to do. Just Google DelCOG, www.delcog.org. We have a website, comes up, things that we're doing, when our next meeting is. Our meetings are always open to the public. They're on Zoom now, like just about everything else is. And you can, we'll send you a link to a meeting, and you can listen to what we have to say. If you have an issue that is important to you, a government issue, you can bring it to our attention. We'll put it on the agenda and we'll discuss it. And maybe, at the worst, we'll give you some good advice.
Well, listen,
or we make it involved.
I've been to the DelCOG, and if you live in Delaware and you want to get involved in what's going on, which you should be doing, this would be a great organization to get involved in. John, you get the final word tonight. Tell me what.
We cover a lot, open government, Inspector General, DART. As a city residents, we need better DART service. We need more bus stops where you can get off where you want to get off. You don't have to walk 10 blocks to get a bus. Fares are fairly economical. So I urge people to get involved, whether it's a DART public hearing or a DelCOG meeting. Please get involved and have your voice be heard.
Well, before we leave, John, let me tell you, I did. Oh, there you go, DelCOG. That's right, Nick. I did go and hear the SEPTA, because SEPTA's thinking about doing it's not a raising of fares, then they taking away fares, they taking away some of the stuff that you get, some of the perks you get with the SEPTA key card. That was on October 16th. If you have never been to a public hearing on any of your government or taxpayer stuff that the government is using, because it's not government funded, it's taxpayer funded. If you have never gone to any of those things, I'm telling you right now, get involved, get with it. Nick, John, it has been a pleasure having you on. Remember, you can see this program 24 hours from now on the Hard Talk with Jakim show on on YouTube. And you also can see it also on YouTube at Delaware Info Now. There's about 200 different videos from my civic stuff. And of course, if you want to hear me cursing and going crazy, that's when you can get me on, you know where.
Sure.
All right. Well, so I ain't gonna say, because everybody thinks that it's only nudity on that thing, but no, we on there because we have a freedom to speak. I'm gonna leave you now with Shahid Bosin, what we started it off with, and he's absolutely right. The only reason you have freedom of speech is because nobody listens to you. This has been the Hard Talk with Jakim show. I will talk to y'all later. I'll see y'all on the flip side. Family, watch this.
I mean, just look at how money controls politics in America today. The Supreme Court's decision on the Citizens United case opened the floodgates for corporate money in elections. Billionaires and corporations pour millions and millions of dollars into political campaigns, drowning out the voices of ordinary people, of the whole electorate. They're hiring candidates. They're writing laws. They're purchasing policies that serve their interests. This isn't democracy, it's oligarchy. When a handful of wealthy individuals can dictate policy and sway elections, obviously democracy doesn't exist. Politicians just do a tour of duty in government to prove their loyalty to their funders before moving to highly paid positions in the private sector, working then for the same people that they worked for all along. The democracy they have is the one they always intended to have, which is one in which only the rich and the owners of the society have any say.